Okay, discussion item, boundary line changes, school of choice and boundary line exemption, Dearborn High School addition.
So I'm going to call it Mr. Jafer. He's going to provide the presentation.
President Lane, board members, Superintendent Dr. Maleko, good evening. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to give you an update. And this is just an update. I think Superintendent Maleko did mention in his opening remarks that we will keep you posted as to what the status of the current process is at this current time. On behalf of the entire central office boundary committee and my partner, Mr. Mustonen, who couldn't be with us tonight, but I will do my best to emulate his eloquence and his finesse. So when this process started with the directions of the board, it started last spring, as you know. And since then, we've had 10 community forum meetings in October and November. And also, we shared the information with the PTA presidents at the prospective schools, and also with the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council. We also held a meeting in addition to the slated or the scheduled boundary meetings or the community forum meetings at River Oaks Elementary. This was done with special request. All the comments and suggestions and questions, it's an open forum, so it behooves us to receive and solicit input from the community. We tabulated all the questions and all the suggestions, and these will be presented to the board in January for your review. And also, we are finalizing the frequently asked question sheet, and this is also will be added to our boundary block. Now, why do we do all of these things? Simply to keep the board abreast of where we are during this process and giving you all the tools necessary for you to make the educated guess come next spring. What we have done so far is at the request of parents who attended the meetings, and at this point, President Lane, I would like to mention that on behalf of myself and Mr. Mustonen, we appreciate it and we thank every single parent, every single student, every single board member, and every single community member, business person or simply a neighbor who attended these forums. I know it can get a little bit tedious, but we recognize the emotional status of these future decisions and how it would impact the formation of the new boundaries for our high schools, for our high school students. So, because it was suggested several times to look into the details of the cost of constructing a new high school, we are in the process of gathering this information. I think Superintendent Maleko mentioned that in his opening remarks. This will give ample proof that we are not dismissing any suggestion from our community, and we will supply you with the information necessary for you to make the educated guess, as mentioned, in next spring. Availability of land also. This is based on research, and also we are meeting next week with TMP. This is one of the biggest architectural firms, and we've used this firm in our previous construction projects here in Dearborn Public Schools to give us an educated analysis of the cost and what it entails if the board so chooses to move in that direction in the future. Also, there has been talk about building a ninth grade academy. Again, Dr. Maleko addressed that in his opening remarks, and we will discuss also with TMP the cost associated with upgrading or building a new ninth grade academy, and some of the stuff that we look into whenever we open new building. This is not brain surgery, but just like our homes, you build a home, you want the furniture, you want the technology, fire suppression. Unless you are a super careful person, I don't think you have more than one or two extinguishers, but of course for the high schools or schools, it's a little bit different. ADA compliance, that's big. Asbestos abatement, if we are to renovate an old structure, we have to look into that extensively. Fiber optic Wi-Fi connections and additional staff, of course. Also, we will be providing additional information to the board, and part of the adjustment period, there might be some new suggestions, new proposals coming from the Central Office Boundary Committee for the board to consider based on some of the suggestions that we received from our community members. And again, ultimately, we recognize it's the board who will make the final decision. Other possible boundary proposals, it will be based on the following suggestions from our committee: keeping middle schools together and reducing travel time on buses. That's important because it's been brought up several times during the community forum meetings about some of the exciting experiences on our buses, but we are a large district, and unfortunately sometimes these things happen. But when it comes to safety record, and you are aware of our safety record as a system who transport thousands of kids daily, we have an excellent safety record in Dearborn Public Schools through our transportation department, and also maintaining neighborhood schools. Looking ahead, there will be another presentation to the board in January. Also, community forum input will be put together for your review. Everything that was discussed, we took notes. I think we filmed one or two presentations, but thanks to community members, all of these presentations are on YouTube or online, so you can also refer to them. Also, we will include in our presentations all the possible costs for any future constructions. February, further board discussions on development of a comprehensive solution to high school enrollment, including boundary changes, program enhancement, and/or new construction. March and April, this is the suggested D-Day, so to speak, for the board to come up with a viable plan to solve the overcrowding challenges at our high schools. And this will conclude my mini presentation. I hope I've given you a little bit of a segue of how things will evolve from here. We were very grateful for the opportunity that you entrusted us to bring these proposals to the community at large, and we had several healthy discussions. Overall, I think this step would serve to be a good springboard for future planning. And from the beginning, you were very clear as one unit, as a board who oversees not only the finances, but the policies and the future of our district. The operative word from the beginning was to be completely, and I am the word completely transparent in our approach with our parents. We have nothing to hide. You have nothing to hide. We are one unit, and we want to do what's best, all of us, what's best for Dearborn Public School students.
Trustee Hammoud. Honestly, I want to thank you for taking on, you and David, of course, this task.
We were humbled and honored. Thank you, Ms. Hammoud.
This, we talked about this, and we all agreed that the community forums were probably going to be the most important aspect and part of this decision that we have to make in terms of listening, taking everything into consideration, and to have you out there explaining, and I know that it wasn't easy most times, but after talking to you on more than one occasion, you always said, we know they care. And
Yes.
this is because we were able to see and hear from so many people that are truly so passionate because they love this district and in one way or another want to see the best for it. And you were on the front lines, so I just want to thank you. You truly took on this role on behalf of all of us. So
Thank you for
thanks.
your trust. On behalf of David and I, again, it was our privilege and honor to be part of the community forums. Nothing pleases us more than sitting down with our community, with our stakeholders, with our parents and business people and neighbors, and have a healthy presentation and discussions. Sometimes we agree on everything, sometimes we disagree on some few things, but ultimately we are, as mentioned, one unit. We have to move forward as one unit. Mm-hmm. And just like a family, sometimes we have disagreement, but our charge, David and I, was not to engage in any disagreement, but rather to explain and to get answers. And honestly, I was very impressed. Some of our parents, were very pointed in their requests for certain cost analysis, for certain suggestions, and I give them tons of kudos and credit because that tells me they are involved, they want what's best, and from these conversations, there might be some new ideas that might come up and will help you finalize a decision next spring. So grateful for your kind comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
I should mention Dr. Maleko was at many of those forums as well, and that's
several
in
board
addition
members,
to
absolutely.
in
Yeah.
addition to a regular day's work. So thank you, Dr. Maleko, for being there, and thank you to the community members who came up
Yes.
with suggestions, proposals. They ran numbers. People did a lot of work, and obviously it's because it's very important for all of us. So, Trustee Barry, I think you were next.
Yes, thank you.
Have the
I
floor.
echo Trustee Hammoud's comments. I think your experience and Dave Muslin's experience served us well. You treated our parents very professionally and you treated them with class. I'm looking forward to all the information coming in. I attended most of the forums, if not all, and I heard very, very loud what our parents wanted and, more important, what they did not want. So I'm looking forward to the information. There's one thing, I know we spoke about it earlier, that I kind of want to bring up. It was a student that brought up the busing issue. It wasn't a parent or a staff member, it was a student that rides the bus, we won't mention names, that told us. She threw some numbers out there. I know our director of transportation was there, he threw a number. I was kind of confused, but I find out today that they both possibly could be right. These are the limits on the buses, but if we are allowing students to get on the bus just because they show up, I would like more information on that. What does that mean? I mean, how do we control if students aren't supposed to be on that bus and get on that bus is more important, just as important. So I know this is part of the discussion, the busing is part of the discussion with boundary changes, but I would like a little bit more
Yeah, we'll get a report memo.
details on that. Thank you.
Can I just mention too that, well, thank you, President Lane, for the comment and the board trustees that attended. And, again, it was, there was intensive schedule because it was 10 over, I think, 3 weeks approximately. And again, I appreciate Mr. Jafer and Mr. Mustin and also the host schools. And then I also want to just say, which I mentioned whenever I was at one of the events, I think I was at like 9 of them. I had to leave a little early at some, or I came a little late to a couple because we had multiple events in some cases. But just really appreciate the community. We really were looking for their input. And now, I mean, as we were kind of stating early on, that there was really no decision made. It was, here's some proposals, bring it. Now the board's going to get additional options based on those community forums. We've already been working on it with my team, and so we need more time just with the data, but we're working on some different, whether it's boundary options, the high school, all those things. So they were really enlightening, and so I just want to thank all the community members, the parents, the students, everybody that came. And I also, Mr. Jafer mentioned about the students. Well, I do have the students on my advisory committee had work to do. So the next meeting, they're going to be bringing information from their schools as to input that they have. We went through the whole blog. David Mustin came to that meeting last month and went over the blog and provided that information so that they could go and try to get a feel for how the students felt. We didn't get a lot of students were welcome to the forum. We didn't get a lot, but I think this was kind of more of a comfortable setting for them to attend where it was just students and not adults. So more information coming forward on that as well.
Well, I observed that we got better attendance at schools that might be impacted by being moved. Edsel Ford springs to mind right away, Smith, and I was not at Salina, but there's still a couple of areas that I'm not really certain about. The situation at River Oaks, where right now they're attending Smith, and then they do change from the split from the rest of their middle school and go on to Dearborn High. I don't have a good sense of what we should be doing there, what the community feels about that. But generally speaking, in addition to the principles that are kind of outlined under slide number 4, keeping middle schools together, for me, I know that I will be looking at less disruption to people. I know that people bought their homes and they live where they live and they've developed friendships. I don't want to disrupt people's lives. I think our lives are working generally pretty well. So that's something else that I will keep in mind when I make the decision. One thing that is going to be difficult for me, so I want to think back over this and tell other people about it. We've tried different things in our district, if we think back, those of us who have been around a long time. And Mr. Jafer, you're one of them.
Thank you.
Even though you're quite young and vibrant and all that.
I'm not young, thank you.
But I remember in the past putting a lot of money into schools that we leased. And so I'm a little bit concerned that people have one idea in mind, maybe like a 9th grade academy. And I've thrown this idea around to different people. Will people want something if it's articulated, okay, you have a 9th grade academy, but you may not have phys ed there, you may not have after school. So, what is theory and what really gets down to nuts and bolts? Do you want to attend this school if you're the only middle school or you're the only high school that has a 9th grade academy? Do you want a small 4th high school? Those are things that I'm struggling with, because when people think about something, they have one image in their mind. And then, as we saw with the International Academy, and I don't even know if there's anybody in the district still who worked on that. People told us.
Our Lady of Grace
yeah,
was my
people
building.
told us, we want this, we're going to go with this.
And it was a dismal failure.
Right, and we put a lot of money in that. So I'm a little hesitant to put money into buildings that we don't own, because we don't get that back. And I know there's a bill in the Michigan legislature to curtail public schools, putting riders on properties that can't then be obtained by a charter school. So I believe in public education, but I don't want to assist other schools. I mean, I believe in Dearborn public schools, and I'm not interested in spending money so that a charter or some other school might come in and benefit from our people's work and money. So it's a lot to weigh, and I just want to say that those will be things that I will be thinking about. But I know that everybody feels this is a really heavy burden, and will make the decision with the utmost seriousness. Dr. Maleko has agreed I'm not going to be president next year, so someone else will be setting a special study session, but I think that we should commit to one in February, when we have the final numbers and everything brought together. So I'm planning on that. I hope everybody will put that in their calendar.
And the one thing I want to keep on reminding people is that we have an immediate need now, and
Yes.
we can't wait for
Thank you.
a building 5 years from now. I've heard from some students who are saying, oh, I'm a junior and I want to have it. Well, you're not going to have a new high school built next year. This is something that's a solution that will not alleviate the current situation right now, and we really need to focus on that, because we can't even go before the community and find out whether they'd be willing to support funding for any other bonds for well over a year. And in that case, that pushes everything down the road. We need to do something now, so we can't take that off the table of our discussion. we need to have a solution within the coming year in order to alleviate the overcrowding that's occurring now. And it's not a conversation that we can't revisit when we can go out for a bond, but it's not something that's going to take care of the problem currently.
I'm very cognizant of Mr. Martin being
Yeah.
before us not too long ago, and in my mind, I analogized it to being on an airplane and how the seats have gotten smaller and smaller, and people have gotten bigger and bigger, and more of us are being packed in to airplanes, and we're contained there. And, you know, I'm very concerned about his concern that Dearborn High and Mrs. El Qadri also about Fordson being overcrowded. So those are grave concerns. And then the fact that we have Mr. Casebolt coming forward and offering that there is some capacity at Edsel Ford. So
True. Edsel is primarily the only high school that not only has the land, but has the potential for adding additional classrooms. You know, you said it from the beginning. There has to be equity across all levels. You know, when it comes to the high school, maybe there was a perception that certain high schools receive better treatment than other high schools. You know, being a former high school principal myself, you know, it depends on what the community invested in each high school and what programs. You know, I give the example of Edsel Ford when we had the humanities, you know, maybe 15 years ago. This was the Cadillac of all programs, but we had to diminish and eliminate that role, unfortunately, when I became principal because of budget cuts and also curriculum changes. So we adapt to the changing times. All in all, we have a wonderful district. We have one of the best, not going to say the best, but one of the best graduation rates in the state of Michigan. It's not business as usual in Dearborn Public Schools, I can assure you that. You know, our teachers, our cafeteria ladies, our engineers, our principals, central office people, all of us collectively, and on top of the pyramid is the Board of Education, have one goal in mind, is to do what's best for all kids in Dearborn Public Schools. So thank you for the time, and we'll be talking.
okay,
Thank
anybody
you.
else?
Just
Dr. Maleko. still-
one thing just on the dialogue that you just had. We continue to move forward on the 4-classroom expansion that the board directed us to at Dearborn High because we couldn't wait. We had to, you know, so we're moving forward. Obviously, those things would come to the board because that is a necessity with the cafeteria. And then the other thing that you'll likely see from our plans, the ones that involve the boundary changes, Mr. Wall and the team and I, we discussed, we have to kind of time some of that with construction. So you may see some phase-in recommendations and things of that nature because obviously you have capacity at Edsel, but it just depends on which option the board goes with or what process we take, that you may not be able to immediately move all students over because you just don't have this, you don't have the rooms built yet. If in fact that's what the board chooses to do, for example, with the Edsel expansion. So I just wanted to point that factor out as it's something that my team and I have been discussing. And the advantage to Edsel, as Mr. Wall has mentioned, though, is that because there's space, a lot of construction could go on and not be a great burden to current instruction in the school because of where they could put the addition and whatnot. So that is a positive. But again, that's if the board decides to move in that direction. But my team and I, we have to plan for those scenarios. So you'll see some of that coming forward in February as well.
And also, if I may add, Dr. Maleko, you know, with any expansion, there will be more taxing of the traffic in the hallways and the cafeteria as well. Cafeteria, locker rooms, the whole night. I mean, we mentioned that maybe at the beginning, at the very first meeting. So we will, as Superintendent Maleko mentioned, we'll give you a precise and concrete study of the impact of every single change that you might see fit to adopt and to take into consideration before you finalize the decision. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Board of Education Business, acknowledgement of correspondence.
I don't think
I
we
don't
have
think we
any
got
tonight.
anything. Board member committee and organization reports.
Trustee Hamud, we had one committee.
We did have our policy committee meeting today. We did go over some policies that we are going to forward to our attorney and hopefully have a discussion with the board, next board meeting, when we do get some advice from our legal counsel on some of those policies. I also had requested some information from Dr. Maleko as to the process of how someone would apply to our schools and what are the requirements for them to show proof of residency, and what our current policy is on that. So I want to thank you. He did, Dr. Maleko did provide me with some of the forms and what is required to show that a certain student and his family resides in the district and in a specific area to go to a certain school. There are 3 forms that he provided me with, one of which is a checklist for student enrollment, and that's for new or returning students. And specifically for the documents required for proof of residency, and I do have a copy of this, of what would be required, one of which is 2 bills, for example, a DTE bill, telephone bill, cable bill, or satellite TV bill, or a closing statement, purchase agreement, deed, certificate of occupancy, and current property tax bill on a home. I did bring up the question, Dr. Maleko, was we have a lot of investors that might buy certain homes, and even though they pay taxes on that home, they don't reside there. So do their children get to go to a specific school even though the child doesn't reside in the area? And looking at these forms, one thing that I noticed, and Dr. Maleko is going to look into this, is that nowhere on here does it say that a child must reside in the verified address, even though I know that that's a policy that we follow. So that's something that I would like to see maybe included on these forms, is that a child must reside in the verified address, not just, a rental property or maybe a business. So I don't know.
I think one of the problems with it, because I was on the residency verification task force years ago, when we updated that. When, by law, if a student has a parent who lives here, but they're divorced,
Okay.
they're allowed to use that divorced parent's address, even if they might reside with the other custodial parent at times, go back and forth. So if you were to do that, you would, and I think it's a law that allows.
So
What
that's the
about the
exception
situation then
So-
if an investor purchases a home?
That's
The
what I'm
CFO
talking
is a
about.
rental, is a rental then, and they're required to have, that CFO would show that it's a rental property, and then so they're not living in the property, so they're not considered the resident, and then, so they would have, then whoever they rented it to would have a rental agreement.
And here's the thing. The requirement is that they just have to show one. They don't have to show the CFO. They could just show the closing statement. So maybe a solution would be show the CFO, or, along with
That
something
was our
else.
intention originally, was to use the CFOs as a first,
Right.
because every residence has a CFO of one fashion or another.
So maybe then we should go back and look at this. and
Might have
maybe
to,
we
because
can tighten it up.
that was the original intention, was to use the CFOs. That way, also, quite frankly, you would catch those properties that were illegally rented out, at which we get more tax dollars for, when they're rental properties. It's at the 18 mills, not the residency things, which goes into the, back into our general fund as well, if people own multiple rental properties that they're not paying the full tax due.
Yeah.
So,
So this is something maybe we can take back to the policy committee, hopefully get some
can look at it.
suggestions, and you've been great at that, and then we'll come back to the board and maybe just tighten it up then.
Yeah, we'll look at that, and I spoke to Mr. Mashur before the meeting, just to get some more details, and he did say that even, it's not in writing on there, but they do kind of inform, the requirements when individuals do move. So if there is, let's just say that we do have somebody that was not, residing, not necessarily a divorce situation, but just it was a property they were claiming, he has people that go out there and actually check to see if people are living in the homes, just to verify that, so.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's it on the committees, I think.
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't think we had any
next.
other. Board member superintendent commentary.
I would like to notice that we have a couple of Boy Scouts in the audience. I'm assuming that they're here to see local government at work. One of them is waving to us. Thank you. Thank you for attending tonight. I hope we didn't bore you terribly. At least the music was good. Trustee Petlicoff.
I have a couple of updates that parents and students alike might be happy to hear about through Healthy Dearborn. One is the city received a grant from the Michigan DNR for a new accessible kayak launch at the Rouge River. So we're going to be utilizing the Rouge in
More recreational.
more recreational way. Also, Transformation Tuesdays are going to be coming back again in February, which is at Fairlane Town Center. It's a workout program that's free. If you go to the Facebook page for Healthy Dearborn, you'll be able to get their scheduling for it, but it's for adults. But if there's any parents out there who don't want to have to pay for a gym and want to get an extra workout and maybe do a little shopping afterwards, head out to Fairlane. And then finally, for the South End, a grant was awarded to train students to collect and analyze air quality monitoring data and advocate for health improvements for the South End community.
Great.
So that's being run through Healthy Dearborn.
I just
Dr.
have,
Maliko.
we mentioned the battle for hunger, but I just want to let you know too, there's a lot of, we've seen a lot of generous people over the last month plus, and it continues. Some of the groups like Rotary, Exchange, Goodfellows. Actually, I had a team with Mr. Duraney, coordinates a Rotary event for the Goodfellows on the corner, and so we had some trustees were out there as well. And so we've got the police, the fire, and Miss Charles was here along with Dr. Rolla, Bazzi Gates, and so those are the two that are coordinating. But I gotta tell you, there's been a lot of generosity of this community, of families that are in need. We had a family that got evicted in one of the areas, needed help, and we called them, and right away, they're there. So we've got a really nice system in place, and so I just want to thank the community. And again, it's a lot of groups. I may have mentioned the 5, but with the firefighters and the police are involved, and they're coordinating with these schools. And so I just want to let the board and the public know that it's very appreciative, especially when we have families in need during this time of the year. So.
Well,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Maliko, that's a good segue to wish everyone a really happy holidays. Sorry, I've got a mint in my mouth now. I do really sincerely wish everyone great holidays, whatever holidays you celebrate. Or if you don't celebrate, I hope everybody is able to take off some time and recharge their creative juices and have a great restful time. Trustee Hamud,
Quick
you want to say
comment.
something? Yes.
I met someone that's standing behind the camera today, and over 2 years on this board, I think she is the first female I see behind the camera.
I made mention of it to her.
So,
No, actually, if we go back a ways,
We did have,
since I've been
to,
on.
but
Yeah.
yes,
since
you've
I've been on,
yes. No.
and her name's Iman, is that correct? And today's her first day.
And
She
she
got all
got
our
through
good
it.
sides,
Yeah.
and I'd like to welcome her to the team. So.
Okay.
Request for information and/or future agenda items.
The next week's policy committee meeting has been changed to 6:30 instead of 6.
Thank you for bringing it up, Trustee Nasser.
Okay, 6:30.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Trustee
we ready?
Petrichor?
Future meeting dates, Monday, December 18th, 2017, HFC Policy Committee meeting, 6:30 in the President's Conference Room at the Administrative Services and Conference Center, Henry Ford College. Monday, December 18th, 2017, HFC meeting, 7 p.m. in the Rosenau Boardroom at the Administrative Services and Conference Center, Henry Ford College. Monday, January 8th, 2018, P12 Policy Committee meeting, 5:30 at the Administrative Service Center in the Superintendent's Conference Room. Monday, January 8th, 2018, P12 Organizational meeting, 6:30 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom. Monday, January 8th, 2018, P12 Board of Education meeting, 7 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom. Tuesday, January 16th, 2018, HFC meeting, 7 p.m., the Rosenau Boardroom at the Administrative Services and Conference Center, Henry Ford College. And Wednesday, February 14th, 2018, P12 special meeting open, 4 p.m. at the Administrative Service Center in the Frank Franchi Boardroom.
Okay. This meeting's adjourned.
And signature for me.